Hello, everybody. For everyone who's watching the replay, this is Evelyn. I am Evelyn of Pink Sheep Design, and this is my Pink Sheep and Friends live Friday series. Guess that would be the best thing to call it. This is episode, I think, 26. Getting up there. I've been doing this for about a year now. So super excited. I came on a little early today because I wanted to have a little bit of time to do a quick announcement for you guys before we bring on our guest. So today is a Happy New Hook Friday because we have new crochet hooks up in the Etsy shop. So it's exciting because this is a very different colorway than anything we've done in the past. This is part of what we call our Cosmos collection because we use color changing mica powder for these. So that's why we group them all together. But I did want to show you guys, and it's really, really hard to do them justice on video and in the camera, but you can see this beautiful emerald, shiny, sparkly color. And if you get them into the sunlight, there's flecks of gold that you can see throughout. The mica powder we used was green, gold, blue. So we've got all of those in our regular jumbo colors from 10 millimeter to 25 millimeter. They are live in the shop. And then we also, let's see, have a few hybrids available in the same colorway. You can see again, super sparkle. I figure if you love like forests and greens and earth tones, like these are the hooks for you because we have not done anything like this that's really that kind of earthy feel. Now, the captain did decide that these are going to be called the leprechauns because it's like leprechauns in space because it's the Cosmos collection. So if we called them something like Magic Forest, you know, it's not very spacey. So leprechauns it is. And these are available now in our Etsy shop. You can use the link in my bio if you want to check them out. We're super excited about them. So, and for anyone who is still waiting on Susan Bates hooks for our hybrids, they are coming next week. So if you check not my latest reel, but the one before that where I'm showing all of the silky rainbow ombre hooks, those are for next week's release. So mark your calendars. Next Friday, we'll release some rainbow hybrids. Say rainbow, ombre, you can pick and choose. So today, what we are really here for is Pink Sheep and Friends so that you guys can make new friends in the fiber world. And I'm super excited to actually be bringing on the first person to this Pink Sheep and Friends series who works for a yarn company. So I feel like it's going to be really exciting to kind of get her input on what that's like, if that's something that any of you guys have ever been interested in. And if you have questions as we work through this interview, please be sure to put them in the question section. Questions or comments that you want us to make sure that we see. And it is right down here. If you are looking at your phone, it looks like a little speech bubble with a question mark. So tap that, put your question in or your comment, and that's going to make it easier for me so that I'm not having to try to scroll back through the comments. So welcome everyone to this live session. I'm so glad that you're here. Today's interviewee, chat friend, this is my friend today, is Ashley Jane. Her Instagram handle is from yarn to stitches. Make sure I don't get everything missed or wrong. But she is not only a pattern tester, but also a designer, a tech editor, and she calls herself a sweater aficionado, which I love. And if you check out her Instagram feed, you'll see what she's talking about. She makes some amazing sweaters. So, and we have plenty of things that we're going to chat about. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her on because she's already requested. Fingers crossed. I'm going to have to change my video angle too, I'm sure. Hello, and hot coffee. Oh no, it's perfect. Hello!
Hello! How's it
How-
going?
Oh, it's great. Oh, and you have beautiful sweaters behind you too.
I do. So I'm borrowing a colleague's office for this so that I'm not bugging my office mate. And
Yeah.
Rachel, who's my like mentor and supervisor, was like, you should put some of your patterns behind you.
Yes.
Hauled in our little mannequins really fast. So I have one that recently published and then one that is a sneak peek. And they're both crochet. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Yes, we'll definitely dive into those too, because I want to talk about your experience as a designer as well. But I do sneak peek that we almost matched today, and I didn't wear mine because I figured we'd match.
I almost didn't wear this because I was like, is it too fangirly to wear
No,
this
I love it.
with the girl who I'm talking to? But I just I'm a big fan, so.
Yeah, and that one, did you get that one through Bonfire? Is that, or through
I believe
Etsy?
so. I think through Bonfire.
Okay.
But yeah. And then it's the baseball.
Yes, I love it. I love it so much.
It's so great. It's so great. And I think it's fun here too because it's the yarn shop at the end of the universe and I work at Universal Yarn. So
right? Exactly. That's amazing. Well, and I feel like too, and I know we'll talk a little bit about this too during the rest of our chat, but the fact that you guys, the main reason that Universal Yarn first opened was to work with small local yarn shops. So it feels like there's a connection there.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'll let you guide the questions soon, but I guess I'll just lead in by saying we're probably the biggest yarn company that nobody's ever heard of because of that, because we only wholesaled to local yarn shops for about 14 years. And it's only been the last 3 years that we've actually had a consumer site. So,
yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about you first. That's usually what I do with these. I let people kind of get to know you a little bit. And we can go all the way back to the beginning with your crochet and knitting journey. So when did you learn how to crochet and learn how to knit, and what has that looked like for you?
Yeah, so I learned when I was a munchkin, a little kiddo. My mom is a quilter. So I took my first kids quilting camp when I was 9, and just got exposed to the world of crafting in general, and fiber and textile arts. And just as a kid, really thought it was something cool and a neat way to spend my time, that I could create things with my hands. And so I went to visit grandparents one summer and they were like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I want to take a knitting class. And they were like, you're a weird kid, but they took me to the yarn shop and I took a knitting class. And then, it was like sometime later that year around Christmas, I was with, a great grandmother who had still been alive and kicking, and she taught me to crochet. So all like within the time frame of between 9 and 10 years old, I learned all of these cool crafts. And then just throughout the years at different interest levels in my life, had time to spend on different ones. And then really the last probably like 5 years or so is when I just really heavy got back into crochet. It just, in terms of that compared to quilting, it's so transportable. And it's been, and it's been the last 10 years that I've lived in Charlotte, North Carolina now. And my mom, who's the quilter, lives on the coast. So it was just something that I could bring with me and we could still have crafty time together, but it was a little easier than toting a sewing machine around. And then I fell in love with how much I could just toss things in a bag. And it just has become this weird obsession of like, I'm always the person who's sitting at a brewery, drinking my beer and playing with yarn. And then, and so really the last couple of years is when it's taken over my life. So.
And what has that, so was there something that spurred this picking everything back up? And what has that meant for you? Is that something that you use to relieve stress? Is it something like, what has the impact been for you picking that back up?
Yeah, so I think it was a lot of soul searching. And like I said, the last 4 or 5 years is when I really picked it back up. 4 or 5-ish years ago is when I at the time had been an educator and had been stepping
Mm-hmm.
into education. And I'm sure many people in the audience know that a lot of educators need a side hustle to like make ends meet and pay their bills.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom had always been like, you should make stuff for markets. And so for a while, it picked up as an interest again because of thinking, oh, I could probably turn this into a side hustle to help supplement
Mm-hmm.
my income. But I didn't really feel super fulfilled with like bulk making random stuff that I hoped would sell.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, you know, like I tried it for a couple years and then COVID hit. And then it just turned into that transformation of like, this doesn't have to be a side hustle. Not every hobby has to be a side hustle. Your hobby can just be an outlet. It can just be therapeutic. And that's when I shifted. Instead of making objects that I thought others would want, I just really started to find things that I wanted to make for me. And I think that was the first time that I ever really viewed this hobby as an outlet for myself. And that was kind of the big shift for me, was like, oh, I can make things that make me happy. You know, you don't have to be thinking about always making things for gifts or always making things to sell at a market. And I think that mindfulness really set in. And then I know I shared with you too, around that time of coming out of COVID is when I started really promoting a Stitch and Bitch hangout that I was doing with some close friends. So we started promoting that and trying to grow a community around fiber and having friends who are interested in fiber. And our Stitch and Bitch hangout grew to the point where we actually founded a guild in our area. So, and so it just became, for me, a shift of like kind of that therapeutic mindfulness hobby and then also community. And I feel like I have just found such a close-knit friend group and community through fiber, that's where it just really took over and became everything.
Yeah. So I feel like a question that some people may have in their heads when you talk about having, you know, the Stitch and Bitch night and that turning into something big enough to where it's like, we have to, you know, make this official.
Yeah.
What did that look like, and how did you find people that were interested? Did you have to like bring people over to the dark side and teach them, you know, I mean, or did you just happen to find, what did that look like?
Yeah, a little bit. And I will say too, it was actually through promoting the Stitch and Bitch hangout that I kind of fell into this job. So that'll probably help us segue between like, how did you go from being an educator to working at a yarn company? So basically, when we all realized like, wow, there's a need for people to hang out and have community like this, we started promoting it by, for one, just collaborating a bit more formally with the place that we were hanging out at. So
I was going to ask that too. Where were you guys having your hangout?
Yeah, so we were hanging out at a brewery that has like a nice outdoor patio. And then also their particular location, even if you were indoors, it happened to have these huge garage doors that would roll up. So they would have those wide open. And so even if you were inside, quote unquote, so that weather wasn't an issue, you still essentially had an outdoor experience. So the timing of coming out of COVID and still sitting a bit far apart from each other, still having that and having that airflow, it was a perfect location. And a lot of breweries have that kind of indoor outdoor setup. And so we basically were just asked them, hey, would you help promote this every week? We want more people to come. So they let us put posters up in the bathrooms and at the facility, and they started putting it on their social media.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And then we basically we created our own little Instagram account for our group, and we started just promoting. And then I was just taking time to find other people in my area, because you can search, you know, just Charlotte, North Carolina, and find other users. I would just kind of randomly lurk around and find other fiber artists and be like,
that's
hey,
awesome.
do you want to come hang out with us? And just make really targeted invitations. And one of those people was Rachel, who's now my boss. And she was like, could never make it out to Stitch and Bitch, but one day was like, I see that you're building this big thing. Do you want to come for coffee and talk about a job? And I was like, yeah. But yeah, like it just was one of those things that it happened somewhat naturally because people just really enjoyed it, and clearly there was a need for this community to be filled within our area. But there also was a lot of intention behind myself and my friends are just people who really thrive on having community, and we really thrive on engaging with people in our community. And so we specifically wanted fiber community to grow in our area, and we all made efforts to like talk about it with people. And when it grew to the point where it was like, hey, outside of this weekly hangout, we should teach classes. We should, you know, do a market together. We should do these things. And when people started having ideas of things that we could do together, that was more than just getting together once a week, is when we realized we needed to formalize and have some structure so that people felt empowered. Because up until then, people would ask me permission, and I was like, you don't need my permission. Like you guys can hang out and do stuff. But I think there just was this natural identity that we were a group. And there was some natural leaders within that group, and we didn't want anybody to feel like they needed permission. So
about how many people were there in the group by the time that you said, okay, we need to do something official?
Yeah, there was 9 of us who got together. We booked an Airbnb for a long weekend, and we had a girls' getaway. Not that we wouldn't have been open to guys, it just we happened to all be girls. So we had a girls' getaway, and we made sure it was a place with a hot tub. We were like hanging out, drinking our wine, and then we were like, okay, during this weekend we're gonna have a working brunch. And we're going to hammer out some bylaws. And that's where, like, basically we looked at other guilds that exist, had a chance to look up other bylaws that exist. And we just figured we wanted to structure ourselves in a way that had a foundation off of other things that existed. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we had a working lunch where we were reworking and crafting bylaws that made sense for us. And it was tough. Like there was a lot of differing opinions with formalizing and having it be like a structure with dues. And we also formalized to the point where we got our nonprofit status. There were some tough conversations about you know, inclusivity and just charging dues exclude people, and how do we make sure we're still including friends of the guild versus people who are paying members. You know, and we have a $20 annual associate level, and then we have a $40 annual like full membership level. So you know, I'm fortunate enough that for me $40 a year is perfectly reasonable, and then we have friends who $20 a year makes more sense for them, and then we have friends that don't want to pay money to hang out, and that's perfectly fine. And so we just are accepting and welcome of everybody, and there's just different levels of ownership with the fact that we're a registered business where full members have a chance to vote on official things, to rewrite those bylaws, and they all lead it now. That's their thing. So
that's awesome.
I mean, still mine too, but it's like a
Do you how many people are a part of the guild now? So like you started with these 9 people. What does it look like now, number wise?
Yeah, so we just hit our 1-year anniversary in May, and we're very close to 40 members.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I figured, seeing that growth.
Yeah, we're about to hit 40 members. We're doing our like a big social retreat this year. There's a big festival called SAF. It's the Southeastern Animal Fiber Fair, and that happens in the Asheville area every year. And so we'll be doing a retreat so that we can go there. Oh, I see that. Hey, girl. But so we'll be in that area to attend SAF and learn and stuff while we're there. And so we have 16 people attending our retreat, which is a big milestone too.
That's awesome. We had someone who asked a question earlier. I tried to bookmark it. And just a reminder to everyone, if you have a question or comment that you want to make sure I don't miss, please be sure to put it in the question box. It's a little comment, you know, bubble with a little question in there. That saves it for me, so I don't have to try to scroll back through. But the Lopsided Crafter asked, Ashley, did you get any more visitors from the fiber market?
Yeah. Hey, how's it going, by the way? so any more visitors? Yes, we had so every week we have a weekly hangout. It's the Stitch and Bitch that is still going strong.
Still happening. Yeah.
Versus once a month is our formal like membership meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So that weekly hangout is like, you don't have to be a member, anybody can come check it out. And we just had a table set up at a fiber market where we were able to hand out information about our guild, and we did have 6 new people hang out at our weekly get together.
That's awesome.
4 of them were guys, which I think is great because like, I mean, you know, this is a skill and a hobby that just should be accessible to every human, regardless of gender. And I'm just really excited to see in Charlotte that crafts in general are growing to a point where people are interested, you know?
Yeah.
So I love it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's see. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. So going from the crafting guild, building that community to having that conversation with your now boss, correct?
Yes.
Let's talk about that shift a little bit and what you do for Universal Yarn.
Yeah.
Yarn?
Hey.
Yarn.
Yep.
Yes.
Yarn. Yep. No S, just yarn. Yep. So yeah, so that shift all just came at a time where, you know, I mentioned when we started to intentionally try to grow our community, I started just stalking people on social media and inviting whoever I could find to like, come out and hang out with us, come out and hang out with us. And she wasn't ever able to attend. The night that we do that hangout is always on a standing commitment, but she already has. But she basically followed up and was like, hey, I see that you're really growing the fiber community in Charlotte. I see that you're really active with engaging in people, and that basically caught her eye. And it just started out with like, would you want to get coffee? And like, would you be interested in maybe working over at Universal Yarn? And at the time, I actually work-wise wasn't sure that I was ready to make a shift. And I also at the time, well, I did not know who Universal Yarn was. Like, I thought, you know, is this like a local yarn shop? Is this really something that I can even afford to work at? Like, I thought maybe if it was a local shop, I may not have the same like salary and benefits. And then lo and behold, I did some Googling, was like, who's Universal Yarn? And I was like, wait, this is a wholesaler. This is a larger company than I realized. There might be more stability there for the point in my life that I need. And I just took that chance and was like, sure, let's go get coffee. And at the time, you know, my goals clearly were also centered around like, how will I be taken care of if I change my career? And I had a chance to ask those types of questions, and she had a chance to essentially paint the picture of what was needed here within the building. And the reality is Universal Yarn is a small staff. A lot of major yarn companies are surprisingly small staff. Once you start interacting with people, even for yourself, like as a designer, I'm sure you've gotten yarn support from other companies before. You kind of start to realize you're interacting with the same people, or you're interacting right with like, this person wears 5 different hats. And with Universal Yarn having just within the past few years opened up a consumer website, the audience for the product doubled. And so they essentially had been doubling their business without really growing their team, and needed help to keep up with that workload. And they also had this big vision of the indie designer support program. And they wanted somebody to be able to help run and manage that. Rachel's primary job right now is she's the creative lead, and her main focus is design. And so she's like, I need basically help with people to run operations stuff so that I can focus more on design and the aesthetic direction of the company. So before the indie designer program was born, my first whole program that I took over was just our trunk show program. So I mentioned before, we have for about 13 years, we exclusively were a wholesaler account for local yarn shops. And for all
and what's that? was that all over the country?
Yes, all over the
Okay.
country, and a couple shops even in the UK and in South America.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and then we also partner with HA Kid, which is distribution out of Canada.
Okay.
And then we partner with another company for the UK. So we do distribute beyond the US, and then just what the team here manages is distribution within the US. So it's a big undertaking.
Yeah.
And for all the yarns that we put out, which if you visit our website, we have like 70 different yarns.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And so for all those
Yeah.
different types of yarn, and for the different like qualities and colors and textures, Rachel's whole job is to help make sure that there are designs and collections being put out so you can see samples of that and inspire people to make stuff. And so for every sample that gets produced and photographed, it lives here in the building. And so my whole thing is I just have a whole warehouse aisle filled with blue bins that are all labeled with what type of yarn, and it's just stacks and stacks of samples. And my whole job is to make sure that those samples get out of our warehouse and get into local yarn shops so that they can feature a beautiful sweater next to yarn and help to inspire and get that yarn moving through their building. So my primary role is a support role for local yarn shops. And then the role that kind of grew for the consumer side was the indie support program, which is providing yarn to indie designers to help you guys do your thing. So
yeah. So who makes all of these samples? I mean, you said you have rows and rows. What does that look like? Because I mean, it just came into my head, like, who makes all of those?
No, that's honestly, that was a huge frame shift for me with working at a larger company, right? Versus my experience working with indie designers. I love pattern testing as an individual hobby. And so I'm like, oh yeah, like, what does the timeline of publications look like? I have friends who test. Do we need testers? And they were like, we don't have time. We do a free pattern every Friday. Every time a new yarn comes out, within a month or two, there's a whole collection that gets released, right? So yeah, it's pretty crazy. And so what we do is we partner with our mills, which we have a mill in Italy that we work with. We have a mill in Turkey that we work with. The owner of the company is from Turkey, so it's connections that she has directly. And the mills themselves have a huge network of sample stitchers. And sometimes we do have sample stitchers that we work with locally. And a lot of that depends on complexity of the patterns. So what we end up doing is often creating just what we call our specs. And so it's essentially getting into like Adobe Illustrator programs. We hop in there, we draw out, if it's a drop sleeve sweater, you essentially are just doing 2 rectangles with the dimensions that you want and the stitch pattern that you want. And it's often charts or just stitch charts basically. So you're essentially having just pictures of what the thing is that you want done, because there's often language gaps. And so sending a full written pattern isn't really feasible. So for example, for this one, I have some crochet cabling going on. So I just worked up my stitch chart for the cables that I wanted to have featured on the front. And then everything else is just half double. So I had a stitch chart for half double. And stitch charts are wonderful because you don't need language, it's pictures, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's perfect. So you just have your stitch charts, you have like an arrow pointing to like where you want certain things to be. You create your image of final dimensions of what your sample to be. And we send those over in batches. So we will send a whole box where it's like, here's the printout of the specs that I want, and here's the yarn that I want it made in. And we'll send a big box at a time and have like 15 or 20 things made that way. And then if
totally different.
Totally different. Yep. If it is something that's more complex, if it's going to be more fitted, like a raglan or a yoke sweater that might take more than just doing images for it. In that case, we would maybe work more with a local stitcher where there's not a language barrier. So we're basically going through a flow of like spending some time creating these specs, sending projects out en masse. And then as they come back to us, once they're completed, we tech edit. So we,
Okay.
instead of using testing groups, we tech edit each other's work, or sometimes we will partner with tech editors that we will have worked with in the past, either with different publications or people who've just assisted with designs in the past. And I saw a what. So tech editing is essentially where you are using the math of the stitches in the pattern rather than somebody living the pattern by making it. So every stitch that you have, of course, has a gauge. And I know gauge swatching is like, if you're making a project for yourself, like, do you really gauge swatch?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But
I didn't used to. Totally honest, did not used to do that.
I did not used to do that at all. It depends on like how complex the pattern is that I'm making and how much the fit is going to matter, right? But so your gauge is how many stitches per inch, and that's all math, right? So if you know that a size small is meant to be this much of a bust circumference, you have an inch count for that circumference, so you should be able to calculate how many stitches go with that time frame. So tech editing is where you have people who are experienced with the math of doing grading for different sizes and people who are experienced with reading different types of patterns and applying that to essentially proofreading and making sure like this pattern is sound because the math is sound. You know, in a perfect world, if we had the time to run test groups and coordinate test groups, we would have a tester of each different size be able to make that and essentially also verify like, oh yeah, your math was right? Like for the most part, it really does boil down to math. But so for the pacing of large yarn companies, that's typically how it's done, is that we have the sample made. When the sample comes back, I'll hold this one up. This is a scarf that I'm grading right now, actually. So this is
that's so pretty.
Yeah, it'll be the Skill Builder scarf. So it alternates between like texture and shells. And so this is one of those where I just sent a picture of the dimensions, sent all my stitch diagrams, and then now that it's back in my hands, I can measure the gauge that that particular sample stitcher used, and I can write an accurate pattern based on the stitches that are in front of me that I can count. So
how cool is that feeling of like sending that out into the world and actually getting it back in your hands? To be like
really cool.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. Yeah, because like it's interesting because sometimes part of the fun of it too is just the surprise of like, did I do a good job interpreting what I want with photos?
Yeah.
Because sometimes things come back and it's like, oh, this is oriented a different way than how I envisioned it in my head. But this is how my instructions were interpreted. And so sometimes things come back and it's like, well, this is just a creative interpretation, and that's what the pattern is now, you know, and so you still end up writing the pattern based on the that you get back.
That's interesting too.
Yeah. So sometimes patterns don't even turn out the way that you thought that they might, which is kind of cool. But at the end of the day, it still is something really beautiful that you've had a chance to envision, and then it comes back and you see your vision as a reality, and then you do the work of creating the pattern based on that math that you know is there, and the stitches are meant to be there. So
I feel like that's almost a good practice in letting go of some control, like for people who are super controlling, of like getting it back and being like, no, this is it now, so like I hope you like it, you know? Instead of feeling like, oh no, this has to be exactly what I thought. I feel like that's actually kind of a nice separation of like, okay, like we can work with this. This is great, you know?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest, like you just hit the nail on the head of like, I think the biggest thing of like what you probably think working for a yarn company is like in terms of the design team versus the reality is like, the reality is there's a lot of pacing that you have to factor in, and there's a lot of demand based on the pacing. You know, every major company, if you look at their websites, they're always giving out like wonderful free patterns, and you want to be able to keep up with that.
Yeah.
And that's just part of the nature of the beast, is like, if you're working with that many patterns that quickly and you're a team of 3 people,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
We do have, so Rachel, for example, my mentor, her biggest passion outside of working here is doing design. She's an independent designer, and she does have a bit more control over her own work when she gets to work on her own designs that way, because it is in her hand and she is crafting her own samples. And she is working with stitch groups in the way that we have more exposure to on Ravelry, right? Or within our online communities. But so it's just different. It's very quickly paced. You know, I think I had this dreamy thought of like, oh, I'm going to work for a yarn company and just stitch all day.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm
Lots of math, right?
All day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and can we hit that? I do have a question that I'm going to bring up as soon as we get done, but that reminded me, if I remember correctly, you taught math or science or chemistry?
Science, chemistry, high school science, biology, chemistry, earth and environmental.
So like you almost did bring some of that, the sciences into the yarn with you, if you're having to do, because you mean like people throw math and science in together. You know?
Yeah.
So is there probably more of that than you thought that you'd be dealing with working for a yarn company?
Yes, absolutely. So I think too, so my exposure to specifically like the design elements of working with yarn had been more of like what I thought I understood to be through an indie design process of like, I'm going to make something, I'm going to jot notes while I make it. And then when I have it done, I have my pattern done, I'm going to have other people test it. And what I've learned is just how much it actually is more about math and more about having a system and a process. And I do want to shout out a course that I took when I first started here that helped me a ton with pattern design, that helped me a ton to orient and acclimate myself here, is there's a woman, Edie Ekman.
Heard of her?
She's awesome. Yeah, she has her whole website. She has a ton of courses. And I took one of her classes on pattern writing. And I think the best takeaway I got from that was like, because so much of designing relies on having good gauge swatching and your stitch counts, is that from a design perspective, you should be able to just swatch something and have the stitch that you like in that yarn, and from that swatch you should be able to write a whole pattern, grade that pattern, and use the math to create a pattern, and then you should be able to test your pattern writing skills based on what you've already written before you've ever made a sample.
Wow.
And so that was like a standard that I feel like that course kind of set for me, of like, okay, I don't need to rely on samples as much as I thought I did, like the actual making experience as much as I thought I did. And that was something that I had to kind of let go when I started learning to design. But then too, it's like design is part of my job that I'm still learning and training in, whereas the education stuff of like not just the math behind it, but like running a classroom, man, there is just organization. Like you're planning content based on a time frame. You are always managing a blend between your calendar of when certain benchmarks need to happen in order to make sure you've taught everything before the end of the year. You're always managing grading papers and rotating, giving work versus assessing people's work and giving them feedback on that work. And that constant flow of different levels of organization that were skills that I learned in the classroom is really what I ended up bringing here with me, because most of my job is like program operations. So I'm running and rotating the trunk show program where I'm getting these samples out the door. And now I'm managing our indie design program where I coordinate with designers to send them yarn. And I essentially have to schedule check-ins to make sure that once that design is ready for publishing, I'm collecting photos and information, where to find that pattern, and getting that over to our social media people so that they can help promote our designers. and then the design stuff is what I've been able to start learning along the way. And because I just have a love of learning and I'm a lifelong learner, that's probably what I'm the most excited about right now, because it's the thing that I am challenging myself the most with.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then I also, within the past week, I am stepping up and taking on the role of creating our catalog. So we will have a digital catalog now.
Ooh,
Yes.
that's exciting.
Yeah. So I've been taking some courses for like Adobe InDesign, and essentially I'll be linking stuff from our website into a catalog, so that when we're at different shows, we'll have catalogs to present. So there's a lot of more, like I said, computer work and kind of process management work with being here at a large company versus the playing with yarn aspect that I could do.
Yeah.
So.
Do you guys have, and actually let me go ahead and answer this question before I forget. So specifically, the Lopsided Crafter asked, can you explain the Indie Design Program? So if you want to just give a brief overview, if people are interested in working with you guys, what does that look like? And then I'll definitely show, I have my jacket that I'm going to show that I've made. So we can talk about that too. Yeah.
Okay. So the Indie Design Program, I'm pumped about it. If you are an independent designer, or if you know an independent designer, even if it's your very first time trying to design something, it can be as simple as like a soap sock. Does, like anything you want to write a pattern for, and you plan to publish that pattern, you can go to universalyarn.com, go to the About Us tab, and there's a link there that says partner with us, and you'll see two windows. One is for influencer inquiries, and one is for indie design partnerships. And when you go to that indie design page, it gives a whole outline of essentially what we're looking for, which is a proposal. So when you are doing submissions for an independent design, and as far as I'm aware, this is similar if you are proposing a design for a publication, if you are publishing or proposing a design for yarn support for any other yarn company. People want to know, like, what is it that you plan to make with our yarn, right? So, or like, what is it you plan to make that will represent this idea? So whether it is a publication or for us just asking for yarn, you essentially are making a PDF where you have some type of sketch of what it is you plan to make. It can just be a hand-drawn sketch of like a picture of a sweater. It can be a sketch of like a bag, or it can just describe that you want to make a bag or a tank top or whatever. Ideally, we like to see a swatch so we can kind of visualize what texture it is that you're looking to do, if it's going to be simple stitches, if it's going to be something lacy. And so you're helping to paint the picture of what it is that you want to create. And then you're saying, here's the yarn I want. So we want to see that you already have a specific idea in mind. If you're wanting to make a tank top, probably you're going to try to look for like our bamboo pop or something kind of lightweight. And have you gone to our page, looked at those nice lightweight yarns, looked at the colors we have available, and you essentially are just listing that in there. I would like to use 5 balls of this yarn in this color to make this thing. And then that gives us a chance to be like, okay, this is a person who has an idea of what they want to make. So I at least know that there's that. They know what yarn that they want to use. So I at least know that you have enough intention to have thought through the yarn that actually matches the project that you're wanting to do. And then lastly, you're telling me your address that it needs to get sent to, and then the general timeline that you hope to have this thing done by. We don't want to send people yarn if we don't know when it might be done, right? Like I'd like to, even if it's like, this could take me 2 years, that's okay. We don't have expectations. We just need to know that you don't just want free yarn, basically. And then from there, it's easy, really. That's the submission. I follow up by saying, hey, I saw that you want to make this project in this yarn. I'm verifying that this is the yarn you need and how much of it. I'm verifying that this is the address it needs to go to. And I'm verifying that I can expect it to be done in about this time frame.
Yeah.
And from there, it just is some light check-ins along the way. Hey, are you still on track? If you need to adjust, no worries. I just keep checking in to make sure that my social media team is able to promote you. So yeah, that's kind of like a very descriptive version of it. At the end of the day, we want you guys to have yarn to make projects to feature our yarn.
Well, and I think the reason, what I was going to say was, I feel like you guys make the way that you've set the process up is really great for people who are looking to get involved, because I feel like that's something that I found was it's really hard to figure out how to get in touch with the right person when you want to work for a company in some cases. So in some cases, companies make it easy, like having the section on the website that's like, here's how you sign up, here's all the information, here's a structure of, I know I did the right thing to try to get in touch with this company. Whereas I remember, and I won't mention the company, but trying to get in touch with a company about yarn support and looking at old, like I couldn't find anything on the website anywhere, and looked at, Googled, how to connect with this company. Found a blog post from like 2007 that somehow still was somewhere on the internet that had an email that I guess was still active, and that person was still with the company at that time. And I was able to actually get in touch with someone to do like a giveaway. But since then, I've reached back out to that email address and never got a response. So I was like, I don't even know if this company still wants to work with indie designers, but it makes it feel very closed off of like, there's a cool kids table, because I know y'all work with designers, like I see it, but I don't know how to kind of get in the door. And so I feel like it's very welcoming when it's right there. It's like, this is on a platter, here's how you do it. You may not get picked, but at least you know that it's accessible and you have the ability to apply and get your design out there, and multiple times, if you don't get picked.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I'm really proud of our program because we try to make it transparent. The bottom line is, if you are a designer and you're wanting to create a sample in our yarn, then we're hoping that you are enjoying your time with that process enough that you're like, I really like your yarn, and that we want designers to come back and use this again. And then we want for designers' audiences to be like, oh, Universal Yarn, like, let me check them out. Like, if you I'll like them, right? And so we not only try to make it an easy process, and just have it be as simple as like, you do yarn, we'll promote, done and done. But we also are trying to uplift people who do work with test groups and who do have big audiences. So we also offer the discount code for testers if you have a test group. And then we also have our affiliate program. So for anybody who applies to the Independent Yarn support program, I'll end up offering those two things. And what's tough is like, I hate to offer it up front and have people think that it's a requirement. And that's the thing, you're not required to have a test group, and you're not required to manage affiliate links or a discount or anything like that. But it's just extra tools that we give designers to like use for promotions, because obviously we want to promote our yarn. So if you are wanting to do some type of promotion period with a test group or with your audience, where you're like, hey, get this percentage off for using my code, then it's there for you. And then the affiliate link is where we essentially set you up where we send you this link. You do have to do the work to like activate it and then put that link in different places. But if you're telling people, hey, shop Universal Yarn using my link and get your discount using my code, then it gives you a chance to essentially earn a kickback on sales. So it's like super beneficial for both parties, because obviously you have a chance to earn income from promoting our yarn. And then we have a chance to kind of get data on like, how effective is this program? Like, are people able
Yep.
to promote our yarn this way, you know? So for as long as that is effective for us to manage, we also are going to be offering those affiliate links and discount codes for people who apply for the program if they want to use them. Which I don't know of any other company that does that right now, unless it's like a specific partnership. So
Yeah. I haven't had that yet. I have not had that yet with anyone I've worked with. I'm surprised. There's one company I work with fairly often that I really do like, and it's easy to work with them, but there's no affiliate type of situation, which would be nice because I send a lot of traffic, you know.
Yeah.
So I think if that ever happens, that would be super helpful. So someone did ask, and this is a big question for a lot of people who want to make designs and work with yarn companies, and that's about pattern rights. I know in my situation, and you can let me know if there's another situation, but I know for me, you guys aren't selling my finished pattern. So I will keep all of my pattern rights. Do you have situations where you ever purchase a pattern or, you know, anything like that? What does that look like for you guys?
Yeah. So for most yarn support programs, including ours, the whole exchange is like, we're just giving you yarn, it's your pattern. And we're hands off. And then we also help to promote you and your pattern on its release,
which is a big deal.
Our yarn, yeah, like you know, it's like, hey, here's a cool project in our yarn.
Yeah.
So like for pattern support programs for us, and as far as I know, this is pretty across the board. It is not meant to help you sell your pattern. It is meant to help get exposure for the yarn. It's yarn companies. We want our yarn to get out there. There have been instances where it's been a cute enough pattern that like above my decision-making level, if someone's like, I really love what they did, can we offer to buy it from them? That conversation might happen and an offer might come your way where it's like, hey, we would love to buy this pattern from you and have it listed on our site. And in that case, that's between you and whoever's making the offer. If it's a one-time thing, if it's like a percentage per sale thing, is it even going to be a pattern for sale, or are they wanting to list it for free? Like that's just, you need to be prepared to ask those questions if an offer like that comes your way. But yeah, for the most part, you're really just getting the support for the yarn. And in our case, you'll get promoted when your design gets published, but we are not trying to partner with you to own your design. You might seek out, if you're wanting to have your designs put out there and partnered with different people, that's where I would turn my focus to publications. So going to like Pom Pom magazine and some of the other magazines that are either in print or online, check in. They'll probably have different newsletters you can sign up for when they do notices. But yeah, like they'll pretty much put a call out and say, hey, we're looking for submissions for our fall 2023 issue. Yeah. And they'll put them way out in advance.
It's out. Yeah, it's out.
Way out in advance. They have mood boards. And your whole thing is, it's a similar submission process where you do your PDF with like, here's the yarn I want to use. Here's the swatch of what it looks like. Here's what I plan to make. And here's how it fits your theme. And you send your submission to them. And in that case, you're looking to do a design for a publication because you're selling your design. So there are different realms where if you want to self-publish and self-manage, you're probably looking to yarn companies for yarn support. If you're wanting to be a designer to like sell your designs, you're probably looking more to publications.
Yeah, and I've had a mix of all of that now. So I've had yarn support to create a design for the yarn company who purchased the design, but I still kept rights, but they don't have to pay me commission on the sales. So they have the rights to sell it however many patterns they want, but I also have the rights to sell however many patterns I want, and we don't have to give each other any more money. So that was interesting. And I've done the magazine route, but so far I have not had to give my rights away for any amount of time. So I've maintained the rights to sell my pattern, even though I also sold it to the company to use for a publication. And then I have had a situation where I didn't sell my pattern. I got yarn support. They can sell my pattern, but I make commission on their pattern sales, but I also have the rights to sell the pattern. So like, it's a crazy mix that can happen. And that's why I think it was interesting. I love that you guys have less strings attached, because it does get really iffy when it's like, well, should I really sell my pattern so they can sell as many as they want and I make no commission, even if I attain, you know, keep the rights to sell it myself? It's a tough question. You have to weigh all of those options, and I feel like you guys made the process super simple. And I will show you guys. So I use.
And I want to say like one more thing on that too. Part of owning the rights to patterns, whether it's you or another company, is pattern support. Whoever owns the pattern is responsible for pattern support. So some of that too is like, it's important to ask those questions of like ownership rights and pattern support and all of that, because you might sell your pattern to a company and then say that there is some small error that gets found, like a stitch count on a row is off. Typically, whoever has the rights to the pattern is the one who's now responsible for answering those questions. Gotcha. So, like sometimes there's even just that factor to weigh in of like, if you're giving away your rights to the pattern to somebody because you're selling it, it is now in their hands to make sure that they are caring for the integrity of that pattern. So
true. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
So I used you guys bulky superwash, correct? I wanted to make sure I got everything, because I don't have a label anymore. This is all that's left of what I had. So I feel like I was pretty nail on the head with knowing how much yarn I needed, because that's always concerning. Like, I don't want to ask for more than I need, but I also don't want to end up with just a little bit too little.
In the future, you can always ask for like one more ball than you think you'll need. It's always okay for us. Yeah, we don't want you to run out.
So for anyone who has not seen it yet, if you don't watch Stranger Things, you know, you may not have the reference, but if you watched season 4 and you saw the jacket that the character Max was wearing throughout the season, that was where the design idea came from. I've never recreated something from like a movie or a show. So when I saw that jacket, I was like, that's bright enough to kind of go with the pink sheep vibe. You know, I can go with these kind of brighter colors. And I'd never created this kind of athletic style look. So it was kind of a challenge for me. Like, can I recreate the look? So if you think like track jacket kind of feel. So I'll show you guys just kind of an up close. So you can see it is half double crochet, because that is my favorite. So you guys can see the texture. Simple, simple, simple. I try to keep my pattern super simple. And I did add the zipper, and this will be a tutorial. I added the zipper with a tapestry needle, but I used the same yarn to make the stitches. So for people who are intimidated by hand sewing with thread, because it can get a little tricky, I wanted an option for people to just use the same yarn that they used to make the jacket to sew in their zipper. And I feel like that'll be a little less intimidating than bringing out sewing thread if you don't hand sew.
Yeah. I feel like sewing thread can get so bunchy too.
Yes. Well, and the thread always knots up for me. Like if I do it too long, so then I have to do it in sections and.
Oh, looks so good.
So now I also don't block anything, because so some of it, like if someone makes this and blocks it, it may, but I feel like it sits pretty nice, like having the collar here. But let's see, I'll sew it up, zip it up.
I have a friend, Kara, who comes to our Stitch and Bitch, and you know, we made it a brewery, but so the joke for her lately is that she will block for beer. People will just give her projects and she'll block them for them, and people buy her drinks. It's great.
So there you go.
So great. I love it.
So there we go. Got the ribbing on the bottom, ribbing on the sleeves. This is added. This ribbing is added in the design where, you know, you do your chain up and then you work around and connect as you go. So I finished my
Yeah.
sleeve and then connected the ribbing, which I've only ever done in one other pattern, but I do have a tutorial now for my beginners.
Yeah.
And then the pockets are added after the fact. Those are I guess an applique pocket. So I made the pocket and then sewed it on there with like a tacking style stitch with the yarn. And that's it. So like I'm
Yeah.
really happy with it.
I love that. Oh my gosh, I love it. And I really like that ribbing where you said how you like you crochet out, you turn it back
Yes.
in, and you just kind of slip stitch and keep on going. Like I love
Mhm.
it. It's really simple. I hate so you hate blocking. I hate seaming.
Yes,
I
same.
just do as
Mhm.
much as I can, just continue to crochet and attach to something else. That's what I like
Yes.
to do.
I think the only seaming in this jacket is the shoulder.
Oh, that's
Because for
awesome.
this one, yeah, you work your ribbing around first, and then you
Okay.
work the body of the jacket all the way up. You
Okay.
split
Turn.
here, it'll make a W, so you'll
Yeah.
have your
Yeah.
two splits. You
Yeah.
seam up your shoulders, and then you attach to make your sleeves.
Oh,
So
and
your
then you work
sleeves
the
come
sleeves
straight out,
around. That's
working them
awesome.
around. And
Yeah.
that's my normal, because I don't like it either. I
Right.
don't like seaming. And a lot of it's the whole beginner idea. So my
Yeah.
my patterns are supposed to be as the least intimidating I can possibly make them.
Yeah.
And even this, once you master this, it's like the coolest way to add ribbing, but it'll still feel intimidating to someone who's never done it. So I try
Yes.
to create some kind of video to help, like, this is a new skill that I haven't put in my patterns before. You can go to my YouTube channel, you can watch the tutorial.
Yeah.
Um,
I
and
love that. Like I love seeing where there's videos embedded in patterns. Like
yeah.
it's just like for personal like hobby making,
Mhm.
it makes it so much more accessible on so many levels where it's like,
Yeah.
I can just watch you do it and do it with you
Yes.
now.
And
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of full tutorials because they're such a bear to film, and the items that I make get so bulky towards the end because they are made in one giant piece that it's
Yeah.
hard to find a space where I can keep it all under the camera and explain it. So I try to take lots of pictures, and then showcase, some of the items. I did a live crochet along. That was the only kind of full tutorial that I did, and that was for my Luna cardigan. So I was able to stop and showcase certain areas that may be a little different, but you can literally crochet a cardigan with me live,
Yeah.
which was
Yeah.
my answer to like the full tutorial. But to me, that
That's cool.
showcased that you could make a sweater. I think it took 6 episodes, so you can make a sweater in 6 hours, and I'm talking the whole time.
That's awesome.
So
Well, yeah, that's awesome. And like, yeah, I love that you are so intentional about making sure people don't feel intimidated, right? Like trying new techniques is scary. And,
Mhm.
it's just something too that even with shorter videos, a lot of times it may not be the overall process, right? Like once you get the stitch, you're like, okay, I'm going to practice the stitch now. But it's those small, like you said, just the cuff, like new
Yes.
techniques where it's like,
Yes.
this is something new. I've never tried it before. I'm turning things weird ways.
And
I
it's
don't
empowering.
understand.
I feel like I can empower people of like,
Yeah.
you can master the skill. It's still going to be beginner friendly. I promise it's going to be worth learning,
Yeah.
And I think you see, if you saw, looks like
Yeah.
Rachel is on here. The
Rachel.
jacket looks amazing. So cute. So glad you're collaborating with us at Universal Yarn on this project. And shout out to AJ because she is an invaluable member of our team. Woohoo! And I know that I am keeping you. I know I'm keeping you over. So I'm going to let you get back to work. I'm so glad that you got to take this lunch hour to chat and come on. And an update for you, and I'm sure you'll email me at some point, but I am finishing up 2 pattern tests, and this is for everyone else too who's waiting on the Max jacket because it will need testers. I have patterns finishing up next week and in the beginning of next month. So this jacket is next up for the test call. So this will be, the call for testers will be in the next couple of weeks. So keep an eye out. If you're wanting to test it for me, I'll need all the sizes. And the good news is you don't have to add a zipper. You don't have to, if that's something that you're not comfortable with, it's still going to be a cute cardigan, athletic style cardigan. And you will have the access, thanks to Universal Yarn, to get a discount if you want to use the same yarn that I used for your test. So you can check them out. And I think it'll be cool to see different colors. Not everybody has to make it the Max style, so you can use a different contrasting stripe, which will be really fun to see what colors people come up with. I would love to see like a color blocked where like this is different from this or from the bottom of the sleeve, like some crazy color combos.
Yeah,
that would be fun.
Shouting out to the yarn that you use, it's our deluxe bulky superwash. The whole deluxe line has DK, worsted, bulky, there's some tweeds. And the superwash, of course, is more of that machine washable friendly, so it's easy care. The bulky, I think, has over like 20 colors. The worsted one, oh my gosh, there's like too many colors. No, I'm just kidding. There's just such a wonderful range. And then there's a non-superwash worsted that has a ton of color options and even some naturals that are fun to dye with. So the whole deluxe line, if you love wool, it's a good one. So
well, and I have to say too, because when I use a lot of the wool blend yarn, by now, if I was wearing this, I've just had this on my skin. This is not over anything but a tank top. I would already kind of be like, this is getting a little itchy. I don't feel that with this. So that's some feedback that I think is really great for you guys, that it doesn't feel itchy at all for being 100% wool. So I really like this yarn.
Good. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. I love the deluxe one. Like it is. It's just, I have it in my hands now.
Yes.
It's very soft. It's very springy and just perfect. And like I said, there's just a ton of color. The only reason I was like too many colors is because I'm one of the people who has to like read every barcode. So, but just tons of colors, and I can't wait to see what people make with it.
I know it's going to be really fun to see what the testers come up with. I'll probably let a few extra people come in just so that I can see what colors they choose. I think it'll be really fun. You guys will get all of that info. I'll reach out once that process starts. But thank you so much again for coming on. This was such a great insight. I mean, like I said, this is the first time I've gotten to talk to someone who works directly for a larger, well-known, at least to wholesale companies and yarn shops, and hopefully to more of our indie designers and hobbyists who just want another place to buy some quality yarn. And I will definitely look forward to working with y'all again, because this has been really great, and it's fun to work with you. So if you're an indie designer, check them out. Check out the indie design program, the influencer program, all of these things. They're making it easy for you guys to have this opportunity to work with them. And I think that's everything for now. And if you missed this live or you came in late, you'll be able to rewatch it here on my Instagram channel. But I also have an entire playlist on my YouTube channel dedicated to these Pink Sheep and Friends episodes. If you need something to binge watch while you're crocheting and you can't find anything on Netflix, then you can check out the Pink Sheep and Friends playlist and make some new friends in the fiber world and some new connections and meet some new people. So thank you so much again, Ashley, and thank you to Universal Yarn, everyone on the team. You guys are fantastic. And we'll talk again soon. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye, Ashley.